For data centers, actually, Mumbai is the capital for India. The most stable power in the country is more stable than even the power in New York.
The number one thing that Bombay had to offer, यहाँ पे लोगों को उनको धंधा सिखाना नहीं पड़ता. Founders across India would always talk about hustle, but यहाँ पे employees will talk about hustle.
We are a bit behind in the AI race, right? And there's not much conversation around it, which will drive the action.
If somebody says India has great AI talent now, please let's not lie to ourselves.
To really think about how do you integrate AI into a hardware solution, package it for India, for the world.
I'm like 2022 तक तो किसी को AI पता नहीं था. Like now 40% of the market has AI in it. Somebody with 10 years of experience, they would have 8 years of experience in AI. The more successful the person, the more active they are at their inbox.
And I'm really not successful.
Hello. Before we get started with this episode, I quickly wanted to share that we're now a part of the Zerodha Media Network. Thank you so much for watching.
Welcome to the Indian Silicon Valley podcast. I'm your host, Jivraj, and today I have with me three very exciting guests and a very interesting topic to discuss. For the longest time in Indian tech, we've considered Bangalore to be the hub. Then we talk about the Delhi IPOs and many companies coming from Delhi, Bangalore, Pune, and other geographies. Yet Mumbai, which has always been the financial capital, the business capital of the country, doesn't go synonymously with AI, tech, startups somehow. And here we're ready to burst that myth because there is this organization team, the Entrepreneurs Association of Mumbai, and many founders in the governing council of team, which work very hard to build this collaborative ecosystem that's putting Bombay on the map. And so to demystify that, today I have with me Mr. Sharad, who's the founder of NESA, which is building in AI cloud. And he's been an entrepreneur for the last 3 decades. Thank you so much, Sharad, for being here and super excited to be hosting you.
My pleasure.
Naya, who's been a founder in the consumer tech space. She's built Baby Chakra before. She was the co-founder of Good Glam Group. And she's now building a new company called Edition.
Thanks, Jeff. So lovely to be here.
Super to have you here, and I've had the pleasure of having Naya, multiple conversations with her before and learning from her all the time. And we have with us Dhruil, who's built a global India for the world software company called LogiNext, and that's been super successful. He's a mentor to many founders who are building in software. Thank you so much, Dhruil, for being here.
Thank you for the very kind introduction and great to be here.
The broad theme today that we want to discuss is the fact that, hey, people don't look to Mumbai and say startups. They think of it as the financial capital. Why is that so? And between the three of you, there is this amazing diversity. There's, a founder who's built for multiple decades across AI, internet, cloud solutions, data centers, multiple things. There's somebody from the consumer world, and then there's somebody from the software world. And so we want to understand the differences, yet the similarities for founders across those spaces, and demystify the Mumbai bubble through this conversation. I want to now start with maybe just very quick introduction so that the audience gets a better sense of who the three of you are. So I'll open the floor and would love to hear from you individually as to how the entrepreneurial journey has been for you, and also maybe personally a bit about each of you as well. So would love to start with Sharad.
Sure. Thank you. So I started my first company from Mumbai in 1998, and it was called NetMagic. It became India's largest data center company. It was acquired by NTT, and I left NTT in 2023. I then started NESA. The common thread between the two was both were headquartered of Mumbai. Both were in digital infrastructure. The first one was focusing more on data centers and associated IT infrastructure in them. And the second one was on AI cloud infrastructure. A fun fact about me is that I love to play tabla on the weekends, and I'm a big cricket fan. Yeah.
Love it. Thank you so much, Sharad.
So I have been building since 2015, Jeff, as you know. My first company was a company called Baby Chakra, which grew to become Asia's largest platform for mothers in maternal and child health. At scale, we had 25 million mothers and 10,000 doctors, completely product-led growth. So pure play consumer tech. That company got acquired by MyGlam. I joined MyGlam as a co-founder, and then we built out the Good Glam Group, which was India's first D2C unicorn. I exited last year after vesting, and now I'm building out my newest company, which is a company called Edition, which is a new age consumer electronics brand. I think similar to, the theme that you're talking about, we're also building a company that we hope will be a category defining company and is made for the world from get-go. It's a global company from get-go. A fun fact about me is that Edition and my second daughter, Raya, Edition were pretty much born around the same time. Raya is 8 months old. Edition's actually much younger, but I would say they share the same date, the year of birth.
Oh, lovely. Thank you
Actually,
so much
that's
for sharing.
similar to me because my first company was when my daughter was born as well, 98.
Wow, lovely.
So maybe
glad
it'll
to
bring me
hear.
luck as well.
Absolutely.
Very beautiful. You should say Naya, that you basically delivered 2 kids in the single
Yeah,
year.
it's one is still in process. One is in gestation.
Yes, do it. Would love to hear from you.
So my background goes back to 2010. This is when I did my master's in US, and my major at that time was machine learning. It was not the coolest thing to talk about at that time. And in 2015, when I moved to Mumbai, I'm not from Bombay, I'm from Ahmedabad, but Bombay was my first natural choice. Bombay had this Powai Valley being shaped up at that time, right? When housing was being built up, Tiny Hall was there, Ola was in Mumbai, OLX was in Mumbai, right? So Powai was the natural choice for me to start my startup career. I was 26 years old at that time, and I think fast forward 10 years, we are almost in the 10th year of our business building. And now AI is the cool thing to do. So we are back to our original story where we proudly claim that we were the first verticalized AI solution in the field of supply chain. We currently power more than 200 brands across the world, including likes of UPS, McDonald's. I'm generally not a very fun person except for partying a lot. But I think generally I've seen myself, learning a lot of new sports. I've been very sportive from day one. I have represented, good state of Gujarat, at a country level in volleyball long ago. I now try to go to the next level in golf and horse riding. So I try to spend as much time I get to dedicate to sports.
Lovely. So we got music, sport, and being a mother. Lovely.
I mean, well, that's not really a hobby, unfortunately. I wish it were.
Should I also say that I'm also a new,
Yeah.
I'm a new dad girl.
Actually,
So-
do you have a daughter as well?
Yeah.
Oh, so we're all like girl
dad.
parents.
Parents too.
That's the other thing, by the way.
You
Since you
have-
want to put
You
commonalities.
have 2 daughters, right? You
Yeah.
said? And you also have?
We got a daughter and a son.
Okay.
Great.
Lovely. No, thank you so much for sharing. I think, as I was mentioning, even preparing for this episode, what I was most excited about is to hear from 3 different perspectives across spaces, across software, across consumer tech, across AI. What are the commonalities and yet the differences? But before we get to individual company journeys, I'd love to understand the broad narrative seems like it's against Mumbai when it comes to startups, right? It's not the first thought when you think of the city and then startups. Is that at all accurate? And why is that the narrative, if at all? And how has that been in your experience, right? Briefly you touched upon how you built from Mumbai, but what is the talent leverage? How have things been as an ecosystem? All of you have also built for quite a while. So you've seen the ecosystem grow from where it was to where it is today. So I'd love to hear your opinions on what is the role of the city in your company building journeys.
So I'll start. For data centers, actually, Mumbai is the capital for India. Data centers require 2 lifelines, power and fiber. The most stable power in the country from organizations, whether it's Tata Power, Adani, others, is one of the most stable powers in the country. In fact, we did an analysis and we found that it's as stable as it's more stable than even the power in New York, right? And so that is the main criteria that drives. So despite the fact that real estate prices are higher, and despite the fact that other states, one naturally assumes that places like Bangalore, etc., might be key for data centers. But the fact that it has got power and it's got undersea cable, also it is the financial capital of the country. So because of these factors, Mumbai is the data center capital. Almost 40% of data centers in the country are based out of Mumbai and Navi Mumbai.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I think I completely agree with what Sharad has to say. I think, the reality is when I was leaving the US and I was coming back to India because there was so much, India was at an inflection point. It still is actually, right? So the belief was, come and build in India. And we were looking at where to come and build from. I specifically chose Bombay. And the reason for that was 3, right? One is that, Bombay is probably the cultural capital of India, right? And I don't know, when you're living and you're choosing to live in a city, you look at all the soft factors as well, right? So if you look at the fact that it's probably India's only global city, if you look at the arts, the culture, the media, you look at, sort of the overall environment, you have folks from different fields of life come in and sort of settle in Bombay. In fact, The last numbers I remember seeing was about 35 to 40% of Bombay actually comprises of people who are from out of Bombay. The second is that it is India's safest city for women, Jiv, and there's enough and more data out there, right? We have more than 6,000 plus, CCTV cameras on Mumbai streets. It actually feels safer. So, while, we could talk ad nauseum about the stats that other cities claim to have for safety of women. When you're in a city, you know whether it's safe or not. And for me, I knew I was building a company which required me to maybe catch a taxi or take the train at 3 a.m. in the morning. Bombay allowed me to do that. I think the third piece is just the proximity. So Bombay is so relevant for India in general. 15% of India's GDP is actually driven by Bombay.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that's so super structured and really nice to hear. Also, I think all of you went to the US to study something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's also a commonality. Yes.
Did you come back?
I
Immediately after your did you start a career there and then move back? Or?
No. I worked in the US for 5 years. So from 1989 to 95, I was in New York.
Got it.
And then I moved back in 95. I started a consulting company, and then I started the data centers is very capital intensive.
Yeah.
Both my ventures have been extremely capital intensive. So I started a data center business in 98.
Interesting. I think for me it was it was very logical business move for me to kind of move from US to Mumbai. And first of all, Ahmedabad was not really an option, which is where my parents were. And I also wanted to live in Ahmedabad if at all I come back to India, because everybody who moves back, they want to live with their family or whatnot. That's one of the key factors. But when I looked at Bombay, the number one thing that Bombay had to offer, and which is still very, very true, is that यहाँ पे लोगों को, the people you hire, उनको धंधा सिखाना नहीं पड़ता, right? So people are with, founders across India would always talk about hustle. But यहाँ पे employees will talk about hustle. And they will not talk about it, they will participate in it. For example, a basic, even an entry-level engineer, right? They would just generally have that understanding about how much revenue my new feature is going to get. Is this company profitable or getting to profits very soon or not? And number two, which I strongly believe which is very weird when I see companies elsewhere in India, is that when you're building tech, you ultimately want to build tech to, especially B2B, right? Like you want to build tech closer to your customers.
Right.
And if you look at literally every single other industry other than tech, all the other headquarters are in Bombay. Tech top retail headquarters, top CPG, bank, entertainment, media, gaming, the list goes on, right? So literally every single customer of ours potentially were decision makers were sitting in Bombay. They are still in Bombay. So that was my reasons to, have my baby born in Bombay, if I can call it.
That's lovely. I think very interesting. I think for any founder listening and considering where to sort of set up shop, these are all very relevant pointers to think about and then, make that choice. Considering that, what are the broad other successes in tech that have come from Mumbai, and thus how does team come together? Because it's super unique for a group of founders to come together and say that, okay, we're going to work towards uplifting the ecosystem. So if you can shed light on, how this was conceptualized, what was the reasoning behind it, and then how's it been? I think it's been a couple of 1-2 years since team's been conceptualized. What's that been like? If you can shed light for the audience, that'll be really helpful.
So team was conceptualized about 2 years back, and it was actually, a community of founders that came together and said that, and I think it was starting origin journey. I think Anupam and Harsh and someone else actually.
Would you believe it was this room?
It was this room, right? They actually met and they were like, we need to be doing something that really so many amazing founders building in Bombay. How do we bring everybody together? That was the starting and the origin point, right? And once people start coming together, right, the ambition grows. Why is it only us? Why are we the only founders who, while we're building in Bombay, there's so many other founders who look and say that where do we build our next set of ventures, and why can't Bombay be that consideration in play? And more importantly, how do we build out this community, which essentially then propels Bombay to a place where it's truly a global capital in all things tech, all things entrepreneurship, where there's talent density, where, we work with our ecosystem partners in the government to really create the relevant infrastructure, the talent, the skilling platforms, the funding platforms, right, to support other people in their ambitions in being entrepreneurs. And if you really go back, Thora Sana Jiv, honestly, Bombay's always been the entrepreneurial capital for India. right? I mean, this is where
what
all the
tag
businesses.
does it, yeah.
Correct. It's always been. I mean, this is where like the Ambanis,
Tata.
Tata, Godrej, everybody's been building the Birlas, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's been building out of Bombay.
Yeah.
So in some sense, ye bhi tha ki like how do we reclaim that narrative on entrepreneurship in the new age narrative of it all, which is tech entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
By the way, fun fact: 25,000 startups are registered in Bombay.
Wow.
Right? It's probably the largest number of startups registered in any of the cities in India, right? And we create more than 10,000 to 15,000 engineering jobs annually.
Oh, wow.
So just giving you a sense of how large we are as an ecosystem and yet so underplayed.
One more fun fact is also, I don't have the exact number, so I'll not quote exact numbers here, but I think the audience should check out which city in India pays the highest amount of income tax in India. The share of Mumbai and Maharashtra is extremely outsized. And I'm just not saying the number because I don't want to be misquoted on even by 1%, but I strongly recommend audience to. And that's, I think, that's what in our meeting with the Chief Minister of Maharashtra recently, like, their sentence to even the tech ecosystem is that, hum log hi tax bharte hain. Right? It's not that other people are not paying their fair share, right? But like a large chunk of income tax revenue for the government of India comes from this city.
Another thing, from a talent perspective, I think retention of talent in Mumbai is much better than in other cities. When we grew NetMagic entity, we had data centers in all major cities, and the highest retention that we had was in Mumbai.
Most of their employees in Mumbai companies I've seen, they truly feel for the company, right? They're not doing a job. And that's something like, we have offices in Delhi and Bangalore as well, right? And elsewhere. But we somehow feel that the kind of passion that, our people really feel on their day job. And they could have they can just like, come as a body and leave and do their bit, right?
Yeah.
And I think the number of companies in especially again, like I don't want to keep bashing Bangalore here, but number of companies in Bangalore, who struggle with this issue. And you won't believe, when you talk to founders, it's a real challenge, right? The distraction that team members have on the next thing that they want to chase all the time is really, a big challenge. And then founders can't even speak about that, right? Because the moment anybody opens up, they'll get bashed online. So they, in the founder ecosystem in Bangalore, you'll see this topic, but they'll never open up about it.
Yeah. No, this is so reassuring because on the pod also, by the way, the constant theme, if you ask a challenges question, is talent retention. It's like, how do you get the right talent? And for the first time, I'm hearing founders talk about talent so passionately that retention's not a problem, hustle's not a problem.
Yeah.
It just speaks to the culture. I think just like, in a way, this is so encouraging to hear because I've always heard founders, even on the show, just talk about like talent being such an issue because everybody wants like a different job. They want something more, and retention is such a big issue.
I think one more thing I want to also bring to light is that when we talk about tech talent, we often confuse tech talent with only engineers. I think tech talent is not only engineering, right? Like, in fact, engineering org is usually around 30 to 40% of the company's headcount. The other 60% people are also tech-savvy professionals building tech companies, right? Which are sales team, marketing team members. And as this India for the world theme is shaping up well, where companies, including ourselves, have real millions of dollars worth of revenue coming from, as exports, from other countries, we see that this is all the contribution of that sales and marketing talent. And when it comes to GTM talent, Bombay is like way ahead of the game than anybody else, right? It's so easy to find very highly skilled, very good at communication, highly work ethic, highly exposed, globally exposed talent. And when it comes to marketing, you need to also have that. If you're pitching to US customers, right, you need to have that US messaging. You need to have a US positioning, right? You can't Google how to position to a US customer and then start doing it, right? And you'll find that talent because there are so many other non-tech businesses and even services companies who have been built from Bombay, who have sold to global customer base, and we often hire from those companies. And you won't believe, like one of the top companies we hire from in Mumbai is Accenture.
That's lovely. I think brilliant to hear and understand the role of teams well. I believe it was this post by either Akrit or Harsh one day that was about tech, like unicorns from Mumbai, which sort of like blew up on LinkedIn, and then it's all been history since. We're now also talking right before the onset of Mumbai Tech Week, which is in like 10-11 days if I'm not wrong. I would love to understand, like, what is the role of such an event in the broad scheme of things, right? Like, I mean, all of the team members are running incredibly successful companies that by themselves are like high scale, high intensity. How do you then come together to, do an event of such scale, stature? What is the broad objective with the event beyond, the broad credibility that it brings to the table? And what is the kind of preparation that goes into making something like this come to life, right? Like, I'd love to sort of understand because...
Before Naya starts, I'm going to do a shameless plug here.
Yes,
Visit MumbaiTechWeek.com
Please.
for more information.
Yes.
Yes.
No, I like how everybody's doing it. All of us been building this together. There's many more.
Sharon is very committed.
She's
None
done
of
the
that.
maximum effort.
None of
amongst
all of us have been working together on this, just bluntly. But here's the thing, right? First of all, it's an event and it's a festival, really, right? And that's the best part of it. We were talking offline, right? I think what's really distinctive about Mumbai Tech Week that you saw last year as well, and you'll see again this year in like even more amplified way, is that it's actually a festival where everybody in tech, industry, entrepreneurship comes together over like many days. 2 days, of course, being the days of the main stage conversations. But even before that, we have a bunch of amazing pre-events and experiences, including data center visits, including NSC visits, including like rides on the local, public infrastructure in Mumbai. And that's when I think it's a very important, almost like, and I think it's become almost like a landmark event in most people's calendars now, right? That you have to be at Mumbai Tech Week, at MTW, if you want to build a career in entrepreneurship or you want to build a career in tech. I think it's almost like you have to be there. You have to be seen. You have to be heard. Secondly, I think this time's MTW is super interesting, Jeff, because it's actually, it was also very controversial when we first came out with it, interestingly enough, right? Because what we have done very uniquely to most other tech events is we've actually brought together speakers, and these are like leading luminaries, right? From across industry, across government, across media, across sport, and then have them interact with leading like the top global and domestic and Indian technologists and researchers in AI, right? So it's literally the world that we see evolving before us. That's the microcosm we've created MTW. Real world, X AI, right? And that is what Mumbai Tech Week this year is about. And if you really look at it like closely, Mumb AI, naam mein hi AI hai, right? So this is also like the sandbox, right? The city in itself is a sandbox of AI playing out at scale. And the third, of course, is that this is where you'll see a lot of demos, a lot of experiences. You'll see a lot of cutting edge tech actually demonstrated by the creators, by the builders who are building them. So I think it's really special.
This is also again goes back to our Mumbai thinking of not kind of overly emphasizing on the engineering side, being, when it comes to tech and AI. Somebody tweeted, a couple of weeks ago that it's the largest, Asia's largest AI event, but no engineers are talking who really actually code, right? And, of course, engineers are the creators behind all these things and we value it. But we feel that to make AI more mainstream, right? You need to talk to a common person, right? Like that's the different thing about AI this time, because is AI a new technology? No, it's been around for 2 decades now. I did my master's in bloody AI, right? So it's like somebody wrote a whole book on AI 15 years ago. But when it comes to adoption, AI has been significantly kind of a laggard over last, 15 to 20 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think 2 years back was the generative AI, the large language models and ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And so now there's so much awareness. And now once you bring all the industry and, media, politicians, everybody together, you get the Mumbai policy towards AI will also become streamlined. It won't in the past, so a lot of in the telecom sector, for example, government came up with regulation that actually constrained the telecom sector.
Yeah.
And I think that's really where it all comes together. And, just want to call out one thing. I mean, when have you seen the chief minister of a state personally invite everybody to come and attend a conference like this?
How many times has he met us? The chief minister of Maharashtra would have met us 7 times in the last 2 years.
Wow.
Can you believe, can you look at the dedication and the focus this government has on AI specifically, and the amount of not just the interest or promotion. He actually talks very fundamentals. Like when you go have a closed door round table, he would go very deep into it. He would ask you questions and learn about the technical aspects of it, which is just crazy in my opinion.
I think somebody tweeted right from Bangalore that
Mohandas Pai.
Mohandas Pai
Yeah.
tweeted that, what is Karnataka?
When will Karnataka
Yeah.
government wake up?
So, I think that's exactly the convening power of MTW, right?
Yeah.
Because, see, the idea is not, Jiv, that it's Mumbai versus Bangalore versus Delhi. It's not about that. It's about how can India win?
Yeah.
Honestly, AI today is a matter of national sovereignty.
No, this is super fascinating to hear because I think just like I had the pleasure of attending last year as well, and the sheer the access, the brilliance, the conversations, they were just so enhanced, right? And if you look at India, like we don't have this premier tech conference to go to per se, right? And in the US, you could point to like 5-10, like Salesforce has something. Everybody like flies down from different countries, not just like states in the US for specific conferences. And there wasn't one to point out to in India. Hopefully this is the one. And this is super helpful to hear, just the sheer collaboration, the conversation, the narrative of AI also. I mean, we are a bit behind in the AI race, right? And there's not much conversation around it, which will drive the action. And so it's great that this is happening. One of the questions that I got for the podcast, by the way, and I was asking just like a bunch of listeners, we have this WhatsApp group, so we end up like putting in questions for the episode, right? Was that, okay, many events happen and events are great speakers are there, but as an attendee, and this is like super actionable, by the way, what do you actually do at some of these events, right? Like, so let's say, I'd love to hear what is that one piece of actionable advice. Let's assume the average attendee is this person who works at a startup, right? They're doing well, they're an operator, they're great at what they do, but they want to get a better sense of what's happening in the world, what's happening in the country, what are the different perspectives. So they'll attend the event, they'll listen to the talks, but what are some actionable things that a person can do at an event at large, and specifically maybe at this one, to get a better sense of the event and just generate better ROI?
So if you look at the overall, programming of the event, right, it's super comprehensive, which can, which has something for everyone, right? Starting from a young, entry-level professional to all the way to a CEO, investor, or a bureaucrat. So for example, if you look at, first of all, of course, it's a great platform for networking because we have enabled multiple kind of areas where anybody can kind of go to any more successful person in their field, have a conversation. If you're looking for a job, there's a job fair. If you have a startup, there's a pitch fest. If you are a student or a builder or an engineer, there are workshops where you can kind of get your hands dirty, learn from other people in terms of looking at their code, what's happening. If you are looking to buy AI or anything in AI, there are multiple booths available where vendors are really and service providers are showcasing the good stuff to be able to sell in a commercial manner. And more importantly, you can have a lot of fun, right? There's a stand-up comedy night. There's a bunch of parties, and this is not just 2 days, right? By the way, right? It's Mumbai Tech Week, so the whole week gets together. So there's a bunch of satellite events, which is outside this Geo Convention Center. It happens from 24th to 27th of February, 4 days, Monday to Thursday, and there are beautiful things like Sharad is hosting. Like he has 8, and he'll talk more about it. He has 8 different batches coming to visit his data centers,
including for students. So we've got batches for students as well as for professionals coming to visit the data centers in Mumbai. And so I think that will give them a whole... Every time we've had students visit, and I've had this done in the past also, they've just been amazed.
And not just students. So we had this, all the team founders had a visit. I remember last couple of months ago, all the Mumbai tech founders, team founders, we all had this data center visit, right? Mm-hmm. And it's so... Even founders building in AI don't know a lot about how data centers are built, right? For example, Sharad was walking us through all this, some lakhs liters, I don't even know the number, some lakhs of liters of diesel they have to keep in backup on site, so that even if there is a 1 second interruption to electricity, there should be immediate power backup. And they had some 100% uptime over last 2 decades or something like. It's just mind-boggling, right? And then they would talk about those liquid coolants, right, where you actually the server goes down to the liquid to have the cooling, which is something I thought कि यार ये तो मतलब वीडियो में आता होता, मतलब अभी we always assume कि US में कहीं पे तो Nvidia कर रहा होगा, बाकी तो कोई नहीं कर रहा है, मतलब research में चल रहा होगा, but this is really happening.
Actually, India is second to none when it comes to data centers and digital infrastructure. We were just like you mentioned about AI, right, where we are a little behind. Even in data centers, and some of the digital infrastructure, when we started, we were behind, but we've caught up really fast. So now when we get, when Entity acquired us and some of the global leadership of Entity came to India, they were blown away. In fact, they've taken a lot of practices from us here to the rest of the world. So
I think where India is behind, I feel. I think India and all of us Indians, I think, have this like somehow this subconscious feeling of trying to chase the same thing the West does. I think again with AI and large language models, we are riding the same bandwagon again, right? Which is where now you're talking about building a local LLM. We're talking about kind of trying to innovate on again. LLM is a new beautiful world that people have kind of figured out without realizing there's so much else there is within the spectrum of AI. I feel instead India should actually focus on its strengths, which is having verticalized AI agents where, for example, if you're building a software for HR or accounting or let's say supply chain, right? Or any industry vertical or manufacturing, there are so many unsolved problems, and the software that you use, it is still kind of being used from like even new age SaaS companies. We struggle to convince our customers to move away from a 30-year-old Oracle or SAP implementation they would have. Why? Because they would have spent so much money on it, right? It's a big change for them to even move to SaaS. SaaS enabled by AI. And what is this verticalized AI agent, right? And AI, it's basically where you don't have to tell the software what to do, but you don't have to click buttons, kind of to looking at a table, apply filters, go on a screen, download a report. You have to kind of instruct the software in normal language, in normal human language, just like how you would use a chat GPT or something like that in your regular life. But in your work life, you instruct the software to get a task done. For example, in some of our customers, they don't really go to a table and look at multiple orders and see when should I be dispatching these orders, which customer should receive it, how the customer should receive the notification, nothing like that, right? All they say is that I want to manage all my delivery delays today by having a communication done to all the customers in a certain way, right? And the software figures out by actually making calls in a human way, right? So they actually call multiple calling APIs. They would use multiple foundational models of multiple third parties to have the whole orchestration done in a single panel.
Sure.
And I think that's where India would be very good at because very few companies in US are building it. Globally, there are so many companies in these core industries who have this problem, and they would love to pay top dollars for this, right? And Indian talent knows how to build it. Versus trying to kind of again, walk a LLM path and then ultimately after 5 years losing that battle.
Yeah.
So I couldn't agree more on the vertical AI agents. We've done the same thing. So we are basically an AI infrastructure company. We don't have domain expertise or different verticals, but what we've done is we've partnered with companies like Dhruvil's company, where, for example, there's an insurance company that we partnered. We built 128 agents with them, and we're taking it to the market with them. So that's one great opportunity. I'd also like to contradict a little bit here. You mentioned DeepSeek. I think DeepSeek was a great example of what India can do, right? Because they did it with like 1/20th the cost of what the US company did.
पता है क्या है? हम लोग ना DeepSeek ने दुनिया के लिए बनाया, right? So DeepSeek also is accessible to the whole world, right? It's actually the mainstream model. हम लोग बोल रहे हैं हम लोग इंडिया का बनाएंगे. I'm like तुमको इंडिया का क्यों बनाना है?
Right? But we can build for the world. So I think we should probably I'm pretty sure that with DeepSeek's success, right, at a fraction of the cost of what the big tech companies have done, I'm sure it's going to spur a lot of people within India to say, why can't we do this? And I'm sure you'll see something come up soon in this space.
That's super interesting. In your experience of building in AI also, like what are some like challenges that we face? Is it a talent gap as well, or is it not? Is it an experience gap? Is it like, our customers, because, the same challenges that stand in software, and because innovation is faster in perhaps a market like the US, which is more developed, are there more fundamental challenges that we are facing, and can there be learnings that can be transferred to listeners?
Yeah, the one thing that I'll easily double down on is that there is definitely a huge talent problem when it comes to AI in India, right? If somebody says India has great AI talent now, please, let's not lie to ourselves, right? Let's accept that we have an AI talent issue and a huge gap to fill. And our talent also needs to acknowledge that.
Right.
You won't believe in last 2 years, now we suddenly 40% of the resumes we get has AI skill set in it. I'm like 2022 तक तो किसी को AI पता नहीं था. Like now 40% of the market has AI in it. And then like even with somebody with 10 years of experience, they would have 8 years of experience in AI. So if we keep lying to ourselves, right, we're never gonna fix the problem because we don't acknowledge the problem.
This is something that has happened all throughout, right? Tech talent, you have to go through tons of resumes to select one or two people. So there is talent, but it's very, very difficult to.
Yeah. What's the solve for this?
I think number one problem is that we need to have our formal education around it. It's still very, very weak in my opinion. All the computer science undergrad programs, which also including the one I went to, have AI as a course, but it's an elective, right? So if you want to do cool stuff, you will study, and that too, maybe 5% of those students will really do well in that. Number two, I think there is no formal training programs or education even companies are able to offer, right? So it's not that companies can expect that every student who graduates with a computer science degree would be an AI mastermind and will do, come and kill it, right? So you need to really invest in talent to be able to upskill them. There is no AI upskilling happening in a meaningful way.
Got it. So there's a supply gap and there's a...
It's purely a supply gap. I think we are, again, just like any other problem in India, this is also a supply constrained issue.
There are a couple of programs, at least in IIT Bombay, where there's a center for C-Minds, there's a center for artificial intelligence in IIT Bombay. And so they have a 2-year master's program. So you get these people from regional engineering colleges who've done well in GATE, and then they go through this 2 years of rigor, right? And we've actually got some good candidates from there. But again, it's not, I think to Dhruvil's point, I totally agree that in general, when you see a resume which says, AI, machine learning, and all the buzzwords are there, right? You go a little bit deeper while you interview them, and you figure out that they don't know much, right? They don't have the depth. And that's a general talent that has to change, right? And I think one way to do it is just, the education system is to learn that a lot of these so-called courses, even the faculty don't know it. Yeah. So how will the students learn, right? So
I also feel just taking an angle to it and open to learning everybody's thoughts. I think even the investor ecosystem in India is usually a very, while everybody says, we keep copy pasting from the West, right? But a lot of investor ecosystem also ends up, copy pasting general themes or sectors to invest into. And of course, I'm not saying that you necessarily have to innovate, right? Because if it's working elsewhere, there are high chances it will work here. So I agree. But I think it's like even including seed stage investors, angel investors, right? Like Series A checks, if they go into meaningful AI companies and they double, triple down on those, I think the likelihood of our ecosystem succeeding at AI will increase. Like I have been seeing out of in last 24 months, if you look at any good VC also, right? Like you look at half of their portfolio is not doing really meaningful AI stuff, right? And I feel sad for it because these are the smartest investors in India.
But I do think, just on a bit of a contrarian view, right? I think, we can break it down into a couple of splits, if you will. One is on foundational LLMs and like talking about that sort of talent. And I agree with both of them when we talk about the lack of talent in India. And also, I think the lack of capital supporting these ideas, right? It's really there. Yes, we could all aspire to be DeepSeek, but there's also been a lot of money that's gone into even giving the foundational basis for DeepSeek that's sort of set it. That now we talk about the 5 million play, right? Which the basic infrastructure in India doesn't exist, right? Even it just doesn't exist. You have to have capital allocated to that to even get it to a basic level. The second, I think, is a lot of the sort of SaaS plays, which are now sort of integrating AI to make themselves become, I think, more agile, but also to scale. A couple of names that come up. One of Team's companies, InVideo, right? The way Sanket has leveraged generative AI to really help his creators unlock a whole new ecosystem. Yeah. So we see businesses and founders accelerating with these integrations. But again, to that point, are we building like fundamental AI products? Or are we leveraging AI to accelerate existing solutions? I think that is really where it falls.
To InVideo's example, I think it's a great example, right? Now, again, just thinking out loud. Until this whole AI wave started being talked about at the global level, like nobody was really supporting Sanket, right?
Yeah,
like Sanket was not even called a successful portfolio company, right? Like every VC in his next round would actually have more, kind of a negative outlook towards the company, right? So then you just like, you push the founder to struggle all these years. And it's not that InVideo started 2 years ago, right? InVideo started in 2017, right? Like he's been a neighbor for,
I have his name saved on my phone as Sanket Masblur from his previous company.
Exactly, right?
He's been at it for many, many years.
I started him in 2022 during my Zoom days.
Yeah. So I think that's why having a bit of contrarian bets,
Absolutely.
right? And being ahead of the curve, taking that risk with such founder. And not every risk will not materialize, but that's only when we will be able to make something meaningful happen from India.
Absolutely.
Or otherwise, we will always be a follower because the world acknowledged video generation. So now video is a great company, right? Like we need to be the opposite of that.
So I think the capital needs to not just follow, but actually almost lead the narrative and lead the way
Not
for
one of
many
the-
companies. Yeah.
One of the companies I recently kind of came across I don't know how even I got access to the deal. I'm investing alongside Anderson Horowitz, like A16Z.
Oh, wow.
These guys are and it's not AI, but they to solve the gun issue and the gun violence issue in US, they are investing into a company which allows only the owner of the gun to operate the gun because with the retina access. Now, this is something which is so bloody out of. I mean, like when I saw the deal, I'm like, who thought of this, right? And this is such a basic thing, by the way.
Yeah, it's,
But let me give you
It
another
solves a big
example,
problem,
right? Let me give you another example. My new company is fundamentally in hardware, right? If I think about it, I'm looking at devices like electronics. So that's basically like hardware, software, and then over time would be like edge/ambient AI, right? How to become the interface for ambient AI. And that's the future forward for AI as well in terms of how it interacts with the real world.
Right.
There are companies in the US that are getting funded left, right, center. I'll give you an example, Opal. We talked about it, right? It's one of my favorite companies because if you look at the way they have thought about, how do you interact with AI, with agents in a very intuitive, non-sort of friction way and using the camera as your portal. India in the 80s had lost the hardware race, right? Again, we have the opportunity now because we do have the manufacturing capabilities. We do have the software capabilities. We do have the firmware capabilities also, right? To really think about how do you integrate AI into a hardware solution, package it for India, for the world.
I think that's a great point. I strongly feel hardware tech from India is like that segment is the least capitalized or undercapitalized sector.
And you know why?
Just great talent.
When you talk so bluntly, Jeff knows the story. We haven't started obviously any of the formal pitches, etc. But the minute we talk about saying that we're doing innovation in hardware, there's always like, what about inventory? What about? I mean, those are the risks you take, and obviously you think about how founders are going to tackle these problems in a smart way.
Talking about capital intensive nature, right? When we started data centers, nobody gave us a chance. They said, how are you going to compete with the big boys, right? Within a year of our starting, we had, the big industrialists like Reliance and Tata and everybody starting. So there was an article in Economic Times which said, something like about a fly and an elephant. And it turned out to be that it actually, the advantage of a startup is it's more nimble, it's more agile, right? Yeah. And so some of these big companies, while they have the capital, but they don't have the agility, right? And so now even with the AI venture, right, it's very, very capital intensive. So a single, 8-node server costs, 8 GPU server costs about 2 crores. And so, and we've deployed a few thousand of those, right? So it requires a lot of, you have to take risk, right? And the rate of obsolescence, to your point, right? It's these things get obsolete so fast, and that you need to, not only you need to deploy them quickly, but you need to get them utilized quickly. Otherwise,
I think one should spend some time in IIT Bombay. The amount of talent there, building, doing great stuff on hardware. IIT Bombay, fresh grad, right? So there's so much talent, and ultimately they all get frustrated. They all ultimately go to US, get their masters or PhDs.
And they raise capital, then build businesses.
Or join great companies.
And Jiv, let me give you an example, right? So this weekend I was at GBS, right? At ED GBS, and I met some amazing founders, right? So I met the founder of Marshall Amps, the sound system, the sound company. He's recently sold it for about $1.2 billion. Then I met the co-founder of Nothing, right? So we were just chatting because now we're all building consumer electronics / like we're looking at hardware as a space, right? And everybody said that, and look at it, like the Nordic countries is so small, but you have Aura Rings, you have Marshall, you have even in the past, you have so many other companies coming from that region, right? The reason for that is twofold. One is that these countries naturally have a flair for building brands and for understanding consumers and for design, right? And number two, they back it with technology. I think in India, where we are today, is we have the technology stack still. Whatever said and done, the basic, very, very robust technology stack and chops are there. Today, for the first time in our history, we also have founders who understand consumer, who understand design, who understand product, who understand go-to-market, and not just for India, but for the world. So I really, really do believe that the next decade for India can look very different. We can actually, I think, build very global products and brands, which are sort of technology products in its essence, but from India for the world, if we play our cards right.
I want to talk more about building from India for the world. But before that, we've spoken about this like vicious cycle of, if there's no talent, then builders are not enough and then capital doesn't follow. It's difficult. But these are all for like global maxima companies, right? What about the like Indian consumer and consumer tech companies within India where there can be AI applications? Because in the US, all of legal tech, all of healthcare, all of consumer
accounting,
appliances,
everything is
all
now
of
moving.
accounting,
Yeah.
all of that is changing, right? Do we have enough scope or where are the opportunities within like India AI to build that? Like just like maybe application layers. Is there a point of view on the table on that?
Yeah, I've already seen, because since we are on the infrastructure side, a lot of our clients are building like that. So we've seen, as Dhruval mentioned, in terms of vertical AI, right? So we have companies doing legal, we have companies focusing on banking for things like fraud detection. We've got a company that's building for insurance sector, for education, for healthcare. So across the board, there are companies building. Yes, it'll take, not all of them are funded. So a lot of them are struggling to raise money because, building an application company takes time to scale.
Sure.
And so, but I think it's, they're seeing early success. And I think this will change as time progresses.
I think two very interesting things. One is that if you look at how people buy online, especially technology products, both in India and the US, actually 45 to 50% of it is now bought online, right? So the broader point here being that people actually are now moving to already being digitally native and being technology aware in their purchase choices, right? So that kind of translates back into saying, I'm not just looking for a commodity product. I mean, bluntly, Jivraj, when I was first talking to my set of like quote unquote VC friends, right? Just to get, what do you think about this idea? They were like, Are China se ODM nikal kar white label kar becho na yahan. Why are you making it from grounds up, right? And I think the reality is that people are actually getting more and they're focusing more on the technology of the product, right? When they're making a purchase choice. And that's reflecting in every piece, including the channel choices. Right. And number two, really interesting data. By 2028, there'll be 100 million smart home users in the US. And there will be, in India, the same number of smart home users. Wow. If you look at India consumer consumption pattern, right? It's actually like an hourglass. It's not like a pyramid because you have the rich, we talked about it, the rich are really rich. They actually want to spend money and make their lives better and more beautiful and more easy. Right. And in the middle is a very commodity market. And the bottom, the players who play there actually make bucket loads of cash because it's a volumetric game, right? So if you play, so most of us, second time founders are actually playing to now the top of the hourglass because they're saying, wahan par margins bhi aayenge, which we can invest back into R&D, innovation and design. So that's, I think, our approach to how you integrate technology into our products and actually make a business out of it for India.
A couple of themes I've seen where I'm also actively investing is for India AI, right? Is one, India has this new income tax code, which is rewritten, right? So there's a lot of this whole CA ecosystem, right? Where every individual and company has to not just spend a lot of money, but their own time to understand and talk to their accountant and do the basic tax filing and tax optimization, if you would. That all can be done via AI, right? And there's a good opportunity, right timing, because the tax code is new and simplified. It's some 1/4 in terms of the size of the tax code. Similarly, I think they are writing the generally legal code as well, and Companies Act also is being rewritten. So a lot of this stuff, where government is kind of doing new things, AI can easily, kind of help life of a local business or a local individual much easier. And you can offer it a premium pricing and people would love to pay for it on a recurring basis. Number two trend I'm seeing is healthcare, right? Like Indian healthcare is a very different ecosystem than global healthcare. Is only going to grow. Of course, GDP per capita will increase and blah, blah, blah. But, there are all these human beings in India who have to be served, right? And if you can serve them well with the use of AI, it's great. But I think there are some of the large themes I feel are good to be built. If there's a young Indian entrepreneur, right, young founder, I think this is what I should go behind.
Lovely. I think this is super helpful. I think we've covered a lot of ground on this front. So we've discussed Mumbai, company building in terms of talent. We've discussed the Mumbai Tech Week and now AI. The other theme that we wanted to touch upon was building from India for the world, right? And let's assume, we've had you're also now building in this space. You've built for 3 decades in that space. You've built for a decade. If you could chime in terms of just how do you approach the problem statement? Let's talk to a very young founder building the space, just beginning, just testing product initially. What should they do? And from your experiences in terms of the initial couple of steps to get to product market fit, what are some interesting learnings from your journey when you're building India for the world? And this was the most asked question. I know GTM is the next most asked question, but when people were asking, right, 3-4 founders texted me, it's just that, okay, now everybody is building for the global maxima, right? How do you approach the first couple of steps? What do you do initially? Do you have to fly down? What are the things that you've observed in your journeys? Would love to understand.
So
You go ahead.
yeah, I have a good story. So this is the 10th year of Loginex, right? And I remember the first two months of Loginex, which is what we're talking about, right? First 2 months, I remember spending heavily on this exciting thing called building the website and building a logo and putting a name to the company, which was an absolute waste of time, right? So what I recommend is that don't spend too much time on building a great website or a logo or or finding what the name should be, because very quickly that's not going to matter, right? And what's going to matter is the value you create. So that's number one. On the India for the world piece, I feel one of the things that I've seen a lot of early stage founders going off is that they don't spend enough time with the customers. When you're building from India for the world, you can't build it sitting in India, right? You must go out there, whichever market that you are, kind of going behind. Spend time, understand the local nuances. Number 3 is, don't mind traveling, right? And don't try to capture the whole world in a single shot. I think when India for the world gets misunderstood by saying that you can start selling for the whole world. You can't do that. You need to focus on some geography and go deep into it, because every geography, no matter how standardized it looks from outside sitting in India, when you actually land there, you will realize there are so many local nuances that you need to kind of build for.
Yeah.
So there are a couple of things.
I totally agree with what Dhruv said. And the first time around in NetMagic, we were actually not building for the world. We were targeting global customers, but who wanted to host in India, because the nature of the business is that people will always host where their target audience is. So it's not that US customers who are targeting the US audience will host their infrastructure in India, right? But the second time around, for the AI infrastructure, we want to take this global. And with the team, we went to Saudi, I went to Dubai. I couldn't agree more that you need to focus on the specific market, find out the challenges, and then address it. The only one point I'll add to what he said is, in my case, I believe we need, since we don't have sales presence and it's a B2B thing, we are looking at local partners, right? So one of the advice would be, maybe initially at least, start with a partner. You can do the tech, you can do, you can figure out you can go yourself, or you can send your solution engineering team, figure out the challenges that you can address, how you can innovate or how you can customize your offering to that market, not only from a pricing perspective, but also from what the customers want.
And this is a great angle, right? So while partners have worked really well for them, as what Shad is saying, for me, it was exactly the opposite. We also tried to, have partners first. And we realized we quickly got a dependency on the partner, where when we ended up speaking to partner more than the end customer. So all the feedback was filtered, and partners' vested interests also get added to that feedback and comes to you, right? Another thing is, we also kind of tried to hire, founders very quickly get tired by traveling, right? How often will you keep traveling? So 6 months, 12 months of travel will, founder fatigue will creep in. And then you will have this beautiful idea called, let's hire a VP or a GM locally, right? Which is the number one disaster that a founder can do. That you can't replace yourself, and you can't have somebody locally there being the founder and they report to you. It's not going to work out. So, don't do that as well. And I think even taking 1-day trips, right? I remember, when I've spoken about this publicly as well, right? So first customer we acquired outside India was McDonald's. And in 2018, we had just opened our, public website sign-up pages to the rest of the world, that now we don't do India only, we'll do the whole world. And we got this McDonald's lead, right? And we were like, wow, even McDonald's is kind of filling a form online. Somebody at a marketing manager level was doing it, and marketing manager was not even our ICP. So like, I don't know why a marketing manager is looking for supply chain solution, right? That doesn't add up. We were like, still okay, we'll do a demo. The demo happened and we were already late in the RFP game, but they said, you know what, RFP presentations are happening next Monday. And then this was Thursday, so I had 2 days to kind of pack my bags, leave. Since the founder was involved, since I was involved, they were so impressed to look at a young CEO pitching. And again, this is 6 years ago, right? So now I think young CEOs are everywhere. It's sort of a new thing for corporations to see.
Oh, you're not young anymore.
Thanks for reminding me. It was not even US, by the way. So it was actually Canada, and went there. And that was the first market where they were running the RFP for the global markets at McDonald's, right? For the home delivery business of McDonald's. And of course, they're super excited seeing me, and every all other vendors have all the seasoned, gray-haired sales guys, and 4 people, 5 people team. I'm the only one with an even younger analyst with me, just to kind of make sure that I have somebody to show with me, and not just one person there. I think that goes such a long way. Most founders think that showing up as a CEO will reduce the value and it will make you look like a small company, but look at Mark Benioff, right? Like till date, right?
Yeah.
He's at hiring, he's at selling, right? That's what he's doing day in, day out. So I think that's what matters. And for us, it was I think it was a 7,000 ARR deal, right? So they started by paying us $7,000 a year, which was, slightly higher than what our India ticket size was at that time. Today, they are our largest customer. We are live with them with more than 100 countries, as I already said. And they pay us more than $3 million just as one customer collectively, right? Wow. So it's sometimes, a $7,000 beginning can result into $3 million over, 6 years now, right? So I think start small, land and expand strategies, it works really well for, building from India to the world.
Yeah. I would say, Jiv, for me, I'm very early on in obviously this new journey of mine, but I think the 3 things that have consistently stood out to me from our last launches and now on this new venture as well. I think the first piece is that, around the world, there is a cohort of people who live, work, and exist the same way, right? That's about, I would say, anywhere from about 600 million odd people to about 1 billion odd people, right? And if you think about the way we wake up in the morning, the activities we do, the devices we interact with, it's pretty similar. Everybody's using an electric kettle all over the world. Nothing has changed there, right? Or everybody's using a lamp all around the world. Nothing changes there. Everybody uses a toaster. Nothing changes there, right? So that is the first thing that I think all of us as consumer founders, we should say that what are the products, the common products in some sense that people all around the world are interacting with and also have the ability to buy and engage with as well, right? So you kind of do that cut, right? And I think that's the first starting point. The second thing I would say is that how do you reach them? Now, it's easy to say, oh, they all shop online, right? But if you look at the US and that shopping online behavior, there's also a big box retailer behavior, right? Which is a very structured channel. Bluntly speaking, India consumer multiples exist because the structured channels are so broken. So investors actually pay a premium for consumer brands that break out because they feel it's still an upside when the channels get more structured. So say that talent is not geographic, it's actually universal. So if you're building out a global company, just get the best talent you can globally and have them aligned to your mission and have them build with you. So I think these 3 things really make a difference when you're thinking about building a globally defining company.
Super. No, I think those are very, very helpful thoughts. The common trail that I'm listening to is, you have to, as a founder starting out, just do the work by yourself, be close to the customer and just put in a lot of fundamental thought into who the customer is, how do you sell to them, and just hustle it out.
And by the way, the last piece I talked to you about, the global talent, one of it was a warm lead from one of my angels. One of it was a cold reach out on LinkedIn.
See?
So I'm just saying, anybody can do that, right?
Absolutely.
I remember I had my first cold email in India in 2016 was to Mr. Kishore Biani. So we were pitching to, and they were doing a lot of e-commerce at that time. And they had something called as future supply chain also, which was a supply chain separate business. So a very relevant ICB for us. And I was like, ऐसे ही देखते हैं, लोग बोलते हैं, cold email चलता है वगैरह वगैरह तो डालते हैं. Within 3 minutes, I got a response. And from that point onwards, I've never left cold emailing. It just works like magic.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. One of my first cold emails for the podcast was to Sir Michael Moritz, who's to Global Chair,
of course.
Sequoia. he didn't agree to be on the pod, but he respectfully like gave me a lot of feedback. And then he signed off his email saying anything is possible.
Yeah.
I still have that, email and his signature. And since then, I've been like,
You know what, the more successful the person, the more active they are at their inbox.
yes,
Right? I've
100%.
seen most people think that if that
That
person is very
means-
somehow. I don't know. Most people think that if you're very successful, big shot, industrialist CEO, you must be very busy. You don't check your emails.
Oh, yeah.
But I think it's absolutely like
Oh, yeah. I'm
Universally
sure there's
proportional
strong
what I've seen.
like correlation with how fast you answer your email or how efficient you are with email with how
Yeah.
good you are capitalistically.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, somebody should do that study. This has been such a pleasure. I mean, we've covered a lot of ground in terms of just like talent for organizations specific to Mumbai, how the ecosystems grow, and a bunch of things which are collaboratively happening at team, and AI, and then building for the world. I think as we conclude, I have a couple of like just final questions. Maybe we can be quicker and more objective with these answers, and we can then close it out. But one of the things there is, what are some things that you have like discovered in the founder journey that you would have otherwise not known? If there's something that you can particularly share, because a lot of people watching may not tread on the founder journey immediately, but they want to learn from founders like yourselves. So if there is something that, the founder journey uniquely taught you about just broadly the world, personal life, or anything else, would love to hear that piece. And also one thing that you're not telling us, which is that it's not easy to be a founder. When we hear folks like you on a podcast like this, it feels easy to look at the end destination, not the journey. So if there's something like, touching that you can share about the journey, not necessarily like, I don't mean to make this dramatic by saying like, okay, downsides or challenges, but like things that are behind the scenes that help you get to where you are. Would love to hear these two things.
So I'll go first. So one of the challenges when we started NetMagic, within a year of our going live, our first data center going live, the entire industry collapsed. Right? There was the dot-com bust, right? And so we were down to the last 19 lakhs in the bank. I still remember I was pitching for the Bazi.com business, and we didn't have enough. They wanted to see our bank balance because they were putting their heart with us. So I actually put money into the company just so that I could show a good balance and ensure that happens. There are many such things. Sometimes about 7-8 years into the company, in 2008 2009, Amazon had already started the cloud in 2004 or so, right? So they started it for their own retail business, and then they figured AWS could be revolutionary, which it became revolutionary. And we were looking at whether we should adopt cloud or not, right? And we said, look, we are building these large data centers, and we start virtualizing infrastructure. Then who's going to use this whole data center, right? And the revenue per customer comes down, and you spend so much capex. But then good thought prevailed, saying that look, if we don't do it, somebody else will. And secondly, that we want to maximize revenue per square foot. Our not try to build necessarily large data centers. Of course, if now the thing is so different that we are building campuses. Right? We built 20 data centers, more than 4.5 million square foot, and still it's still growing at like 30% a year.
I mean, so many learnings, Jiv. I think the first, honestly, has been just to back yourself. I think all founders will pretty much say, because when you're starting off a journey, you're probably the only one who believes in yourself, right? And there's a reason you're starting off on that journey. And there's so many examples I've shared in public domain on that front. I think just linked to that also, like to take some differentiated bets, right? Because every time I've done something that just feels like, what I've been told to do or what feels right to do. I'll give you an example, right? In Baby Chakra, we were told just grow at all costs, right? Why are you even looking at monetizing? And I remember when we did our first launch on baby products, which we co-created with the community, and then they sold off, like we had 6 months inventory, sold off in 5 days, right? It felt like that was right. That was the right answer for us. Like we should have monetized earlier, and we were specifically also advised earlier that don't, you have a great growth story, just focus on DAOs as your North Star, right? So I think, sometimes just like believe in yourself, believe in what your gut is telling you. And, I think my journey would have been a very different journey from a Baby Chakra perspective if I'd followed that gut earlier on.
Yes.
So I'm usually a big promoter of taking the plunge and starting up, and all the founders are, right? They would always advise you to start up. Today I'll give a flip side. I think 100 times before you do.
Okay.
Right? Because sometimes the flip side of the entrepreneurship story and the glamour is that it's not for everyone. Right? If you need to inherently be a risk taker, because not just to, on your day one that you will have to take the risk to start the business, but pretty much every quarter or in the beginning, every month, but for the rest of your journey, pretty much every quarter, every year, you will have to take one such decision, which could be, make or break kind of decision for your company at any scale. And this happens to a, business with $100,000 revenue, 1 million, 100 million revenue, or a billion revenue, right? So if you can't take risks, and if it's not in you, it will be very difficult. Another thing I would also, I also suggest that if you're, entrepreneurship requires extreme context switching on on a daily basis. So a number of times I would have gone through, from a good hire to a bad investor call, to a great sales call, to a retention call, to a, taxation issue, to getting a random legal notice from some patent troll in US where you're not even operating. This is all in like first 24 months, right? It just it really creates a lot of stress. So if you are, if you do not learn, or if you cannot learn to kind of cope up with this stress and live that life for the rest of your life, then it is not for you. So I think my advice today would be to think a lot before taking the plunge.
I would still advise to take the plunge.
I was going to say that as well. Are we the only two optimists in this room? Shut up.
Because I think in the long run, right, as Naya said, that, as long as you have the self-belief, right, it eventually works. I've seen so many people, even in our case, right, as I said, in 2001, 2002, the whole dot-com industry crash, we thought we wouldn't survive. And it just became India's largest data center company. And similarly now, right, of course, one more thing I'll add on the second time founder, right? The bar was set so high in the first time that puts added pressure on the second time. But other than that, I know
I've seen the other one also. A lot of founders who don't succeed in the first time
succeed in the second time.
They do. And because entrepreneurship is so addictive that once you're a founder, you're a founder
you
for
won't
life.
make the same mistakes the first time.
And you would still want to, no matter how unsuccessful you were in the first journey, you would still want to
I
pursue
think that's why we all choose to invest in second time founder. Like bluntly, like if a second time founder comes to me, failure or success, I'm like, yes, let's talk.
And you have to be at it so badly, like an wise people don't start up, I think.
And there will be
some
some inflection point, something will just take off and things will just change. I remember when we built our first data center, we said, how are we going to fill it, right? We were selling single racks. Now we are selling campuses, right? I mean, it's just completely changed the way it's, the growth has happened. And I think the same thing will happen on AI infrastructure.
By the way, that Lage Rao Monna Bhai could also be Mumbai's motto. I mean, like everybody here is like just at it.
Always.
That resilience you see
on
play
this
out.
Saudi trip, we had some similar conversation over a shisha. And some common theme, and everybody went down their memory lane and whatnot. And the common theme again came out as this, that all of us are just like, we were crazy enough to keep persisting to another level. तो मतलब वो Vishal was saying कि अब सब एक पागल खाने के मरीज है.
और सब बॉम्बे में मिलेंगे. Jeff, on that note.
Yeah, no, that's been lovely. I think keep at it is a great note to end on. There's this study which has been done that most entrepreneurs at the start have this sense of irrational optimism, they call it, which is necessary because smart people sort of count out the reasons. There are enough reasons to not do it as well, right? Correct. So if you're smart enough to count it out, you probably don't take that
Steve
risk.
Jobs also has famously said it, that a wise person would give up because that makes more sense to give up at that point.
I think NVIDIA story, right?
The Jensen went on record to say, had he known, he wouldn't have.
Yeah.
So I mean, he should have.
So honestly,
this has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much. I think we've covered a lot of ground to share for future founders, what it means to sort of keep in mind, which city to keep in mind. It's commendable that the three of you weren't born necessarily in Mumbai, but chose to, after having US exposure, come back to this city and build for the reasons that you shared. And then you're building in frontier tech in the truest sense of it, taking the India flag forward. And it's lovely to see how the ecosystem's coming together for MTW and things like Team. So thank you so much for doing this. I'm sure this has been I certainly have learned a ton. So I'm hoping that the audience by extension will. And keep at it is the best team to have ended on. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Jay.
Thank you.
Thank you for
so
having
much.
us. Thanks.
Thank you for having
And see you at MTW.
Yes.
Thanks.
Hello. If you made it this far, you've probably watched the entire episode. And if you've done that, I'm really grateful. I and my team try to put in a lot of effort to ensure that we can bring the best quality content to you. So if you liked the episode, if you watched it thus far, my request to you is to share it with people, to subscribe to the channel, and to ensure that we can keep growing. We are everything and anything only because of you, our listeners. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll keep bringing to you amazing content. Cheers.